Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to present in a few minutes a rather maybe complicated concept, and I'll try to do it as concise as possible and without going into the technical details. But before I forget about, we have a sort of a publication, and on leaving the room, afterwards I invite you to take a copy and regard this further at home. So, what's Integrato? Our idea is that, and that's the theme for today, that we have to go to a more developed modal shift. If we look at the results on the last 20 years about what did we manage to realize in modal shift, okay, there are more bikers, okay, there is a little bit more ridership on trains and metros and buses, but in fact this is not the real revolution, and we need to go further, we need to go faster, and we need to have more ambitious goals. And so I will concentrate on, there is a modal shift to different soft modes of transportation, but I will concentrate on the public transport. What do we need? We need to make the public transport more attractive. And we set a goal. We think it is possible, with the right measures, to double the ridership on our trains, metros, trams, and buses by 2035. That seems a long way to go, but to change public transport and to have the necessary investments and the cultural change that we need to do this, it takes a long time. You cannot do it in 2 years. So the idea is to create a more integrated public transport system, and with the focus is on system. You have to have an integrated system where all the planning is done as one global concept, with and not as it is today with our different transport companies, that each one is a bit working in its own corner and without too much consultation and a global plan that encompasses the global system. And everyone is doing good efforts and everyone has its own priorities, but we don't see any global concept for the system as a whole. And that is our point. And we need, in fact, to regard the global public transport sector as one system, one network, with one timetable that is intimately connected, and ideally with one tariff, so you can travel on all means by one ticket. With our project group Integrato, we have been studying over the last years how we can implement this in Belgium. And we have, for that, focused on railways. But it is a global system where all the public transport must be integrated. Well, I skip this. Okay. Now we go a bit into the techniques. And what do we need to do? The first thing is, and that sounds a bit maybe too technical, but I will try to explain. The first thing is you need a symmetric timetable. That means that trains in the opposite direction cross each other on the hour and on the half hour, on the minute 0 and the minute 30. It's I don't go into the details, but it is important, and the interesting thing is that this is a principle that is already applied in Belgium by an NMBS SNCB. The timetables are symmetric, and that is an enormous advantage. We need this to have a better system. I will explain this later. The point is, trains cross on 0 and on 30, but they do not cross always in the station. If you would take a helicopter and you fly above Belgium, and you approach it's 30, okay? It's 2:30. And at this moment, you will see on everywhere in the country 2 trains crossing each other. but not necessarily in the stations. And so the thing to do is we have to organize the coming together of trains on these crucial moments in the stations as much as possible, as much concentrated as possible. I will go further on that. The next thing is, usually on most connections there is 1 train an hour in Belgium. And we like to go to a minimum of 2 trains an hour on every connection. Of course, there will be more trains from Leuven to Brussels, from Antwerp to Brussels on the main lines, but the minimum for every kind of train should be a train every 30 minutes. If you do that, there are 4 meeting points every hour. Trains will cross each other at 0, at 15, at 30, and at 45. So it increases the possibilities to organize smooth connections in some key node stations. And if we go further on that, I'll show how such a node can work. So the slow trains arrive first, let's say 3 or 4 minutes before the hour or before the half hour. They stop in the station and then at the platform, and then 1 or 2 minutes later the fast train comes up, because the fast train may not stop too long, because otherwise he's not fast anymore. And then if the fast trains and the slow trains from both directions arrive at the same moment in the station, travelers can go anywhere they want, from any direction to any other direction without waiting times. It is a comfortable and smooth connection, and you can organize it for every passenger in every direction. That's the concept. And then afterwards, the fast train starts first at 1 minute or 2 minutes after the hour, and the slow trains start afterwards. Okay, and it's not only a question of trains. It is also the occasion to have good connections with bus services. You can put shared cars at that place, and so on and so on. So that's the concept of a node. Oh. I forgot to show the. Okay. So this is a theoretical concept, and you can say, well, yeah, that sounds good, but can it be applied in Belgium? And that was our main question when we started the project. So we all knew that these principles are scientific and everybody understands the logic. But then comes the question, and that's always what we hear at the Belgian railways. So it's, okay, it's an interesting idea, but it's not possible in Belgium. It is not possible. The Belgian rail net is different, and everything is concentrated in Brussels, and you cannot organize the nodes. It's not possible. And that was our starting point when we started the project some years ago. We said, well, let's prove that it's possible. And we did a hell of a job in imagining the timetable for 2035. Just we say, okay, we need 3 types of train. That's the different colors here, red, blue, and green. The green are the slow trains, the local trains, the omnibus. Blue are the regional trains with more stops, but not everywhere. And the red ones are the real intercities with the fast service between big cities, okay? And then for each type of train, we imagined what we will need in 2035, always starting from 2 trains an hour, at least. And then taking the distances between the stations are where they are. We cannot build a new network. The rails are where they are, the stations are where they are, and we just put these public information about distances between our stations, average snelheid, velocity, speed, average speed of the trains, the different train types, and then calculate the travel time between each station. And now comes the point that's the easy part, but then if you want to realize the principle of the nodes where all trains come together on 0, 30, 15, or 45, then you need to define in an intelligent way where these nodes have to be. Oh, what's happening? Oh, no, okay. Okay. This is to show in detail how we calculated the travel times and the minutes of arrival and departure. It's just one example for the HASSELT station, but we did this for every station in Belgium. That's a bit another zoom, and you can see with the yellow and red points where the nodes are, and if the nodes are on 0:30 or on 15:45, and so on, just to give you a look at what it is behind all these systems. It is not possible to explain you everything. And then we came to this choice of nodes, and that's a very important thing. You have to decide on which places, which cities you organize the node. You cannot organize a perfect node in every station. It's impossible. Why? Because, as you see, the only moments where you can have a good connection with everything, every element of public transport is on these few moments of where trains and buses come together. That is on 0, 15, 30, and 45. So the nodes must be at an interval of some 12, 13 minutes or 27, 28 minutes. It is mathematically defined. You cannot say, oh, my city is very important, I want a node. No, you have to take the objective reality and create your integrated system on that basis. And so we define the nodes where we think it is possible to make them, where we think that it corresponds with the real travel times, and we have concluded that it is possible on the existing Belgian railway, on the network as it is. And not as smooth as possible. You need some investments, you need some works to do here and there, but not too much. And we think the investment that is necessary to realize this from now to 2035 is not higher than what is invested now in the railways. So it is possible, it is feasible, and it is financially feasible also. Okay, so now I have to look at the time. That is in a nutshell how we worked on proving that such a integrated transport system is possible for the Belgian rail network. But you have to always remember that the aim is to conceive a public transport system as a whole. So it is easy to understand. Once you have defined the places where your trains will work as a perfect node, there will be some 30 places where the train can build a perfect node in this system. Well, from then on, it is easy to understand that for the bus companies, for the regional authorities, for the vervoerregio's, it is not so difficult to take these nodes and plan their bus lines around the same concept, so that regional bus lines who bring travelers to the train station can arrive also at 55, 56, wait for some minutes till all other people coming from the trains and taking a bus to their final destination can get on. Then it will be, in fact, more efficient and more cost efficient for the regional bus companies to organize their network around such integrated and well thought system. And in the end, and that's the aim, of course, and that's why we think it is necessary to go to the modal shift, to realize it effectively, because in doing this, in applying this principle, you see easily that we have a public transport offer that is totally different from what we have now. You can easily travel from any point to any point if it is well organized. And it means that your total travel time, if you take a trip from not a trip from Leuven to Brussels, it will not change, it will be 20 minutes like now. But if you take a trip from, I say, Gerardsbergen to Lier, it will make a great difference. Or if you want to go in a combined way with first a bus and then a train and then another train and then a bus, you will win more than an hour in comparison with the actual situation. And in fact, we believe that these waiting times and these badly organized connections between all these public transport is a main obstacle for people to choose for the public transport. I see it with myself. I'm a fervent user of public transport. I make most of my trips in public transport, but there are some moments and some destinations that you say, well, no, this is too complicated, this will take too much time, I cannot trust it, and then you say no. And I have a lot of friends who once in a while try the public transport and then have some bad experience, and then they say, oh no, it's nothing for me, I won't do it again. And if we don't solve these problems, these subjective obstacles, then I think the modal shift will never be more than something marginal. And you have to do a structural change in organizing on a scientific way a complex public transport system that can work and that can be attractive and that offers a far much better service. It will take some time, but it will not take more money than now. Say good public transport will cost money, but bad public transport costs money also. So there is no point in hesitating. Well, that's just a picture how it could work in a small station. You can see how it works in a beer station. If you go to Switzerland or Austria, you go in Zurich, in Bern. It's very impressive. You get some 15 or 14 trains arriving in the Zurich and Bern main stations. At just 5 minutes interval, the station is completely full of trains. Everybody goes from one platform to another and takes the next train or the next bus who is just beside the station. And 10 minutes later, all trains are gone and the station is empty. It's empty from 5 minutes past the hour until a half an hour later. And then everything arrives again. It is possible to organize it. Most of the times in Belgium we're used to look at Anglo-Saxon experiences or the Francophone world as some kind of inspiration or example. But maybe for this point we should go and look to something we don't know very well in general, that's the German world. And what I try to explain here and what we did with Integrato is in fact take the principles of transport planning that are already applied in Switzerland for 30 years. They started in 1990, and they have now, after 30 years, the system is a bit like they imagined it would be, and they're still working to improve it. And then in Austria, they did the same thing, in fact, some I think from 1990, 1995. And then we have Germany, where the same principles have been applied for some years in the Länder, in parts of the country, but that are a Deutsche Land, Bayern, North Rhine-Westphalia, that's just as big as Belgium. So there we have very good examples of how it can work already. And now, 3 years ago, the federal government, the Bundesregierung, decided to apply the system on the whole network. So they're started to work now, and they tried to be ready in 2030. I think it's too optimistic, but nevertheless, the exact year is not important. What is important is the direction we go. And we should go in that direction in Belgium. And therefore, this is an invitation to everybody. In the first place, of course, NMBS Infrabel, but we already presented the project at the board of directors and with the timetabling department. And it's also a responsibility for the transport authorities, the Federal Minister of Department of Mobility, the regional, also for social actors. I think there is a lot of interest in this concept with employers' organizations who see the advantage if you can have a shift, a serious shift from people going by car to their work and causing the congestion. Well, you can but even with a modest shift, let's say 10% of car drivers changing to public transport, there will be no congestion anymore. You don't need to have everybody out of his car to have a solution. And so I think if we can build this coalition with all interested people, also workers' organizations, trade unions, cities, local authorities, and so on, and we believe in this system, and we say, okay, let's take it and let's work on it and have a plan for 2035. That's the first thing to do. Make a consensus, make an agreement about the public transport service you wish in 2035. And then you plan. You plan your investments, you plan your gradual steps, you plan year after year your budgets and how to arrive on it and work together to build the integrated system. Voila. In the end, I will show you a short video how it can work. Ja, dit is geen klank. We gaan opnieuw beginnen.
Zie je er ook zo tegenop om elke dag weer in de file te moeten staan? Droom dan even met ons mee. Op een dag fiets je gewoon naar een station in de buurt. Je stapt op de stoptrein en leest op je gemak de krant. Enkele minuten voor het volle uur rijdt de stoptrein een groter station binnen waar je moet overstappen. Maar dat verloopt vlot, want een paar minuten later zit je al comfortabel op een snelle IC-trein. Een kleine 30 minuten later rijdt je IC-trein stipt het volgende station binnen. Je moet weer overstappen, maar dat vind je niet erg. Want ook hier moet je niet wachten op de bus die je naar je bestemming zal brengen. Zij wacht op jou. En zo kom je vlot, ontspannen en stipt op je bestemming aan. Een sprookje, denk je? Te mooi om waar te zijn? Nee hoor, Integrato bewijst dat het ook in België kan. Integrato is een openbaar vervoernetwerk dat tegen 2035 helemaal uitgerold kan zijn. Treinen kruisen elkaar elk half uur op hetzelfde moment in een knooppuntstation. Je kunt er vlot van overal naar overal overstappen. Niet alleen van trein naar trein, maar ook naar bus en tram of omgekeerd. Zo geraak je in ons land de hele dag door, ieder half uur, overal met het openbaar vervoer. Van het kleinste station tot de grootste stad. En vanzelfsprekend met één vervoerbewijs. Bus en rail als één geheel. Laat ons samen de droom waarmaken. Dat het openbaar vervoer weer de plaats krijgt die het verdient. Tegen 2035 moet dat lukken. Integrato. Een netwerk van openbaar vervoer dat je vlot brengt waar je moet zijn.
Thank you.
So, are there any questions? I'm sure there are questions for Guy, because this wasn't an easy presentation. This is a whole new view on rail. Maybe one question from me to start, same question as before. Does anyone take the public transport in Belgium on a regular basis? Okay. And who of you have never complained about connectivity issues? Okay, guess that's quite clear. I see Wim, you have a question. Sorry? Did you have any problems with connectivity during those? Public transport is getting better thanks to COVID. Maybe it's indeed. Are there any questions for Guy? Because, okay.
Yeah. Actually, two questions, but first of all, I have to say I think I'm lucky because I live in a village of Brecht, and in Brecht, I think we're having this principle applied, so I can testify it works really well. The bus and the train, they cross all at the same hour, so it works well. My question is, first of all, with the map of crossing points, I saw one point veralgemeende knoop. I was just curious to know what it means.
Yeah.
And second of all, I was also curious, how is this study funded? I see now the Nationale Loterij, but I'm curious, how is it funded and what is the next steps? Is it going to keep doing studies?
Okay. Remo, what was the first question? Yeah. I did not went into the details, but what we decided in the course of our work is that if you want to implement this on the existing Belgian network, there are 5 or 6 main stations with many tracks and many platforms where it is technically not possible to organize the arrival of all trains on the same hour. So it is not the node as it is conceived in the system, and we say it is een veralgemeend knooppunt, or a generalized node, because there is no organized encounter of trains on the 0 and 30 minutes. So we say in Antwerpen, Berchem, Brussels Centraal, Ghent, St. Peters, Leuven, we do not organize the arrival of trains on the same minute, because it's technically not possible. And we thought that in these stations, the number of trains in any direction is so frequent that, okay, waiting times will be maybe, in some cases, a bit more than 5 minutes, but not 45 minutes. So that's the choice we had to make in order to make it work. Yep. Then how is our work funded? Our work is totally volunteered. We are a group of some 10 people who, during 5 or 6 years, have worked together without any funding. The only funding we got was a very small sum of the National Lottery, and that's why we put the logo in order to pay for the video and to pay for this. That's everything. And the website. That's all.
Are there any more questions for Guy? I find.
Okay.
Thank you.
You said you already presented it at the board of directors. What was their reaction?
Yeah. It's difficult to feel because, okay, they're listening and they think they all say, oh, okay, it's interesting, and we're going to study this, etc., etc. So there is no objection in principle. It's only there is some doubt if it is possible, and yeah, we don't know, and it's difficult, and then there's a lot of things to change, and because yeah, if you look at this from the internal standpoint of a big company like NMBS, of course they are hesitating because it means in the end reorganize the whole network. It means change the working hours of the people, change the location of the material depots, buy other types of trains. Well, you see, it's complicated, and yeah, change is difficult, and well, you have to convince them of the advantages, and that's the whole thing. But I think that if we want to succeed, and if we see how it worked in Switzerland, in Germany, in Austria, the main impulse did not come from the railway company. The main impulse came from the public authorities. Because public authorities say, well, we pay such a lot for our public transport, and we're not happy with the result. We want a better result. And you have to push from the side of the partner who pays for the public transport is organized by public authorities, not by railway companies. And That's the mental shift and the cultural shift we have to make. And there should be a stronger implication of, let's say, politics, authorities, departments, ministries, to define what they want, to define, I give you so much money, but I want this. I think we are going into that direction. I think on all levels, federal and regional levels, there is an awareness that the public transport authority must be the determining factor. And yeah, if we go further on that and we make it the collaboration, the cooperation between all these policy levels a stronger thing, and then we can convince people that this is really a nice concept and that it works in other countries, why shouldn't it work here? And then we can take some steps forward. Maybe it will take a long time, I agree, but there is a real interest, and we feel it in different contexts and with all other types of organizations. We spoke a lot about, of course, we spoke a lot in Zoom and team meetings. So this is the first time we can present it at the live event. And yeah, maybe the idea at some way or another is going further, but we are limited in our possibilities also. We don't have a strong organization, we don't have a budget, we don't have permanent personnel. So we need the support of a broad coalition of other partners who push in the same direction.
So if you want to invite Guy for some lecture somewhere, I think Delaine maybe could be interested in the system.
Well, we saw a lot of people of the line already. Huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying because there's someone in the room. Okay. Any more questions for Guy? Okay, one of the ideas I find very interesting as well is the idea that mobility is determining your spatial planning for a large part. The 30 minutes between the nodes, very interesting. It's a concept we have turned around in Belgium and Flanders. Our spatial planning is determining our mobility. Mm-hmm. And maybe just immediately an introduction to the next speaker who will talk about werken aan de ring and the new mobility network, because the ring around Brussels is one of those examples where our spatial mobility determines our mobility.
Okay, thank you.